Welcome to Level Table Live, Level Legal's monthly legal services live stream that dishes up breaking news, hot tips, and personal stories. I'm Joey Sieber, CEO of Level Legal. As usual, I'm co-hosting with our Director of Client Solutions, Daniel Bonner. Daniel, good to see you.
Hi, Joey.
Yeah. So we usually host these live streams all in the same place, but Daniel and I are both traveling. I happen to be in Boston today. Daniel, where are you?
I'm in DC.
All right.
So
we're spread out and spreading the good news of Level Legal.
Time zone aligned, though, right?
That's right. Listen, I'm excited to have all of you who are joining us here today as we explore traveling tips and stories about Stephanie Angel's move from Big Law to Big eDiscovery. By the end of our time, you'll get to hear from Stephanie about why she left Big Law and WilmerHale to set up eDiscovery at a Fortune Global 500 company. You'll get to hear about what internal and external attorneys wish they knew about each other, plus how to handle legal holds, manage tool stacks, select vendors, all the kind of exciting topics in eDiscovery. Stephanie, welcome to Level Table Live.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely glad to have you.
We're looking forward to it. So before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this live stream. So if you would not wish to appear in any way, please drop now. But you'll be able to watch the full recording later after we wrap. Also, we like interaction here at Level Table Live. So put your questions into the comment section and we'll get to them here or later on if we run out of time.
Yep, that sounds good. So let's get to know our guest. Stephanie Angel was born and raised in Massachusetts. Stephanie, you are in Massachusetts now as well, aren't you?
I am, yes. Never left.
So we're in separate parts of Boston right now, I think.
Yeah.
You went to Suffolk University Law School in Boston and started as an associate at some small firms and then moved as a senior staff attorney to a larger firm. Now, Assistant General Counsel for eDiscovery in-house at Fresenius Medical Care, right?
Yes, it's Fresenius.
Fresenius. Well, there we go.
Fresenius, yes.
Fresenius. I've been saying it wrong all along. I'm not sure I'll get it right.
That's okay. I'll correct you.
Fresenius. Man, I should have done my homework there. Anyway, a member of Women in eDiscovery, the Boston chapter, spoken on several panels regarding eDiscovery topics. And then Stephanie and I first met years ago when you were at WilmerHale, I believe, working for a common client on a project. We've shared lots of good work and some good meals, and I appreciate knowing you through the years and getting to know what a great job you do in eDiscovery.
Well, no, thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's been great working with you guys and getting to know you over these years. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I don't want to count the years.
Yes.
Well, let's get started. So we've called this the topic of this live stream traveling, because you've been on both sides of kind of the legal services equation, if you will, law firm and corporate.
Yep.
Many attorneys probably would never take that risk. Do you consider yourself to be a risk taker?
No, absolutely not. I am the most risk adverse person you'll probably ever meet. For me, it was more about where I was in my career. I felt like I had been doing eDiscovery for over 10 years at a large law firm. I felt like I was at a point in my life where I really knew what I was doing when it came to eDiscovery, and I felt like I could offer more. And so staying at a law firm, I didn't feel like there was a lot of opportunity there for me to expand what I wanted to do in the space. So I had decided, actually, right before COVID in 2019, I thought I would start looking for a job. And then COVID happened and I thought, nope, I'm going to stay where I am. Things are too risky right now. And then little did we know that the market would boom during COVID. So I decided shortly after that to actually start looking. So, but no, definitely risk averse.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that decision. You made the move back in 2021, right?
Yep.
And so you're 2 years in. What would you tell attorneys at firms who are maybe thinking about doing the same thing? Do you have a bit of advice after a couple of years?
Sure. I mean, I think it's obviously an individual decision for everybody. For me, it was a great decision. I don't regret it at all. It's been wonderful for me. I think the biggest pro, which everyone talks about when you go from a firm to in-house, is there's obviously no billable hours you need to worry about.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a little freeing. And you definitely get used to that quickly. The other thing I would say, which I just alluded to previously, was that I feel like there's more opportunity at a company. You're really looking to build out a program when you're in a company, as opposed to in a law firm where maybe it's more structured and you kind of just do what it is you're tasked to do with, and that's it. I also think my experience anyway with being in-house has just been that it is very collaborative. I mean, I know when you're at a firm, you're working with different attorneys, you're working with your clients, but I feel like at a company, there are just so many people you're talking to. You're working with your outside counsel, you're working with your IT people, you're working with all of the different groups within the company. It's just, and everyone, at least in my company, has been wonderful as far as collaborating on things. So I can't say anything things about it. But the other side of that, those are the pros. I would say the cons, and again, I work at a large company, so I don't know if this pertains to smaller companies, but it has been very tricky to understand our business units, who does what, who do I go to when I need something. And I will say that a friend of mine, when I was leaving Wilmer, she said to me, oh, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable when you're in-house. And I didn't really fully appreciate what she meant by that. But it's true that when you go in-house, you just don't know really anything and you need to learn. And then once you think you know something, you find out, well, I don't actually know who I need to go to for that. So you really need to find people that are within the company willing to help you navigate.
What size staff do you have there, or folks that you work with?
So our legal department, it really varies. I would say the legal department that I work most with, there are about, give or take 15 of us that work pretty closely together. But that's just in the North America office that sits in Waltham.
Okay. And for those who don't know, would you kind of describe Fresenius and what business you're in?
Sure. So we are in the dialysis space. We are a vertically integrated company, and we are the largest provider of those services. So it's a healthcare company. It's great. I mean, not only is the job enjoyable, but we're actually doing good work and work that matters.
Good. Thank you,
Stephanie. I appreciate you sharing all the pros and cons. That advice is great, and of course, it applies to going corporate, in general. Since you focus on eDiscovery, what differences have you found there?
So I would say maybe one of the biggest things that I didn't expect was a little bit of confusion. I think when you're at a law firm, a lot of people, or most people that you're dealing with, know what eDiscovery is and what it is you do. But when you're in-house, you are dealing with different people within the company who have maybe never touched anything related to litigation before. They don't know what eDiscovery is. And so it's just trying to work through that and explain what it is you do, why you need information. I have been confused with IT before. I had someone call me and ask me to reset their password, and I was like, that's not I don't do that. But at the same time, I've called people to ask for things and they're not the right people. So it's just learning. But that's been, I'd say, one of the hurdles. And then I would say the other big change, I guess, it's more a switch in the way that I think, is just about the expense of everything. When I was at Wilmer, I was a senior staff attorney. Although I saw some of the bills, I wasn't involved with doing the budgets. I wasn't concerned about the bills we got from our vendors or from our, from anyone. It wasn't on my radar because I wasn't in charge of that. And now being at a company, trying to oversee the eDiscovery practice, the money is one of the biggest factors, right? We're trying to reduce expenses wherever we can, but also put out the best work that we can and get the best result. And so it's been a little bit of a mind shift for me to adjust to that way of thinking, just really having to think about the budgets with everything I do and still doing good work and trying to be efficient with things. I just, I didn't appreciate that going in, how much of a factor that would be.
Yeah. Well, speaking of costs, we have a question from Sean, who submitted this with their registration form. We're talking about funding. How does one individual fund a venture of this magnitude? And have you considered outsourcing even overseas? If so, do you think it may become a race to the bottom for the legal professionals?
So I don't know how one individual would fund a venture of this magnitude. I think for me, I'm obviously at a large company. So there is funding, there is a budgeting piece to it. Again, I didn't appreciate all of that when I was first came in-house. I think you become comfortable with learning about the cost centers and what the budgets are and how do you go and make a business case to get something approved. And for me, that's been a real learning curve. And my boss has been phenomenal about, I basically put together a list of ideas. I present it to her. She says, okay, I think that's great. Put together the business case. And then we'll present it, kind of up the chain and see where we can get. And it's been a real process, and it definitely takes time because there are so many stakeholders at a company of this size, but it's been great as far as learning, and everyone has been very supportive of the things that I've come up with, and I can't say enough good things about it. And then you mentioned something about overseas. So it's a valid question. I will say I personally want to give the work to the most qualified vendor or person. They may not be the cheapest, but I want the best work product. And from the limited experience I've had, going overseas isn't always the best solution. We did have a brief conversation at Fresenius about maybe moving a little bit of work overseas. But I went through the pros and cons with some people about that, and we decided it wasn't a direction we were going to move in at this time. And even with respect to those tasks, they were more administrative type work. And so it was more to take the burden off of the legal professionals. So I feel like as far as, legal professionals going to the bottom, I don't really see that happening personally.
Thanks for that. I appreciate your answers there. And in the spirit of more questions, we've got a couple others here from Joseph. What do you wish you knew about in-house counsel and the responsibilities when you were working outside counsel? And what should in-house counsel understand about outside eDiscovery counsel as well?
Okay, so what do I wish I knew about in-house counsel when I was at Wilmer? I guess one of the things I would say that surprised me is I never appreciated the hoops inside counsel had to go through to get data or to track down where information might actually live. When I was at a large law firm and we would have calls with our clients, I was surprised how the attorneys didn't know where the data was, or we'd have a call, they didn't know who to go to or where to get it. Now that I'm on the other side of that, I see why that is, right? That the data mapping isn't necessarily there. There's turnover at the company. So maybe somebody knew before, but now there's somebody new and they don't know where to go to get the information. So that's been a real surprise and something I didn't fully appreciate. And I think that maybe when you are outside counsel, maybe you don't fully appreciate it either. I also think, I didn't always appreciate why it took so long sometimes to get answers to questions. But again, now that I'm in-house and I see how many hoops you have to jump through to get answers sometimes, I see why things can take a long time. And sorry, what was the other part of that question, Daniel?
Yeah, the second part was, what should in-house counsel understand about outside eDiscovery counsel?
So, we're working together, right? We're right. Working towards a common goal. I think one of the things that maybe in-house counsel doesn't always keep in mind is the timelines. I think, there are scheduling orders. There is a reason usually when outside counsel is asking for something to be done on a rush basis. And I think in-house counsel can sometimes be frustrated by those rush requests. But I think as long as there's open communication about why you need something, when you need it, that it just makes everyone's life easier. The other thing I would say is that if the outside counsel has an eDiscovery attorney, that you should really work closely with them to understand the data. When I was at a firm, I was going through the data. I knew the client's data inside and out. Now that I'm in-house, I don't necessarily review the documents, right? So I don't really know exactly what's in there or what type of data we frequently collect and or produce. And so I feel like you could really work with your eDiscovery attorneys that are on outside counsel, that they could really work with you and help you. And then I guess there's one other thing I would say, and this is more just been my experience in-house, and I think it's important, is when I was at Wilmer, I made sure that I trained any associates, counsel, anyone who was at the firm to make sure they understood what eDiscovery was, how you do it, what you should be thinking of. I mean, I would train them on how to log into a database, how to look at the documents, how to code the documents. Any question they had, I was happy to answer. And I feel like it made for a more efficient process when it came time to actually do collections, productions. They understood the data. They could do their own searches in the database. I mean, I was obviously there to support them and do whatever I could, but I was just trying to get them to take a little bit of ownership of certain tasks. And I do think that with outside counsel, it would be great. I don't know if a lot of our outside counsel, right? Some of them have eDiscovery attorneys, some don't. But I think everybody could really work on trying to educate all of the attorneys about eDiscovery, why it's important that you code a document completely, why you put together searches for documents and then submit those for production. Just little things, right? That I think when you're on the back end, you think about it. But when eDiscovery is not your main focus, maybe you don't think about it. But it can really be helpful.
Yeah. Were you doing the training upstream of a matter?
When I was at Wilmer?
Yeah. So proactively?
Yes. When we had a case come in, I would generally have kind of a eDiscovery 101, if you will, with the case team about what my expectations were, how the process should work. And you do, especially at a firm, I think, you get a lot of the, well, I've always done it this way and it's never been a problem. But I think what you need sometimes is someone to push back and say, okay, I understand that, but that's not the most efficient way to do it. Or there's a better way to do it. This is how we should do it. We really need a process. Let's be more uniform in our approach. And I think if you do that, people will buy into it. I also think that clients see it and they appreciate it.
Oh, 100%.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it's great. And then also I will say when I was at the firm, not only would I do like a little eDiscovery 101, but whenever we had first year associates who were hired, when they came in, they had a firm-wide training about everything, and eDiscovery was part of that. And I was usually on the panel to present a little bit about eDiscovery and kind of what it is. That being said, when you're a first year and you're learning about eDiscovery on your, first 2 weeks of work, you have no idea what that means.
Yeah. That you touched on what was going to be my next question, because of curiosity, and that is among either newer lawyers or lawyers who are inexperienced in eDiscovery, is there a common thing or things that they just don't know or understand, or maybe that's not really an artfully created question, but what do you find most commonly are kind of gaps in knowledge in eDiscovery?
I think I would say one of the things is people don't understand how important it is to think about eDiscovery at the outset of a matter, right? You should really be thinking about everything you might need for a case. Whether or not you need it, put that aside, but just think about everything you might potentially need. And then loop in the eDiscovery people as soon as you can, because they're really there to help you with that. And I think a lot of people who are newer, especially at firms, they don't always think about that. They might think of eDiscovery as, well, you're not the partner, you're not the lead attorney, or whatever it is. And it's just, eDiscovery is just so important in all of our matters now that it really is better if you can loop those people in early. The other thing I would say is I think just honestly, it's just the coding of documents. Like, it seems like such a simple thing, but I don't think that all attorneys fully appreciate how important the coding is, right? Because you're creating work product. You are documenting why you did something. It's there. It will be there forever, if you're arming the matter, whatever it is. But you want to be able to know why you did something. And if you don't code the documents completely, then it leaves a lot of question about, well, why didn't this get produced? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
It's often the difference between crossing the finish line in style and then having massive rush jobs and last minute fire drills trying to recreate process and workflow and validated production candidacy decision.
That's exactly right. And I don't personally, I do not like rush requests. I don't like, run the production and stop the production. I feel like there's a much better way to do things, and you just have to think about it up front and work together. Again, we're a team. Everybody's a team. So just work together on what the issues are and work them out in the beginning so you don't have problems at the end.
Yeah. Stephanie, as I think about your experience there, starting a couple of years ago, that that would seem like a daunting challenge. I mean, at the very beginning, we talked about taking risks. You said, well, I don't really consider myself a risk taker, but somebody coming from big law and moving into, you know, a global Fortune 500 company, you know, that's a daunting challenge, or could seem like it. When you went to Fresenius and, you know, we're kind of faced with that challenge, what did you find there, and what were your kind of first steps? How did you start?
Sure. So I was lucky in that the role, lucky again, I guess I say I'm not a risk taker. And again, I don't think it was a risk because I felt like I knew the eDiscovery space, but I was hired knowing that the company did not have an eDiscovery attorney, right? This was a new group for them. They wanted to hire an eDiscovery attorney and then an eDiscovery project manager. So they really wanted someone who could come in with ideas. And so that was exciting for me because when I was at the law firm, I had ideas. It was just, there really wasn't anything to do with the ideas because we were on the law firm side of it. Things just, there was a structure in place. Whereas at a company, I really could come in and think about, okay, what is it the company is currently doing? What can the company do better? How do we balance those two things? And for me, it was overwhelming, like no doubt about it. The first few months of going in-house were overwhelming for me, but also exciting at the same time because it was, okay, let me think about everything. I'm a list person. I literally made a list of everything that I was seeing, what I was noticing. I did a lot of observing this first like few months just to see how things played out. And then I thought, okay, where can we improve? Where are we spending a lot of money? Where is there a lot of risk? I didn't necessarily know where to start. So I said, okay, let me think about this. And I decided, I literally pulled up the EDRM on my computer to look at it and thought, all right, let me bucket the things we're doing right into categories based on the model. And then thought about, for me, I thought it made sense if we started on the left and we moved to the right. And so I was looking at our legal hold process. And again, when I was at a firm, I didn't do anything with legal holds. This was all, I mean, I obviously knew what they were. I occasionally would help with the notices, send them out. But as far as actually putting data on hold and just the nuances of it, I wasn't involved with that. And so this was new for me, but I thought about it. And at Fresenius, currently, everything we do for legal holds is done manually. So there's a lot of risk there. And I thought, well, if we could automate this process and bring in some software, that would be the better way to do it. And so it was thinking about that. How do I present it? I talked to my boss about it. She was great, put together the business case. And so the business case is really reduce the risk, we'll gain efficiency. Yeah. And I mean, the things we're looking to do with a legal hold, I mean, they sound simple, but it's track the legal holds that are being sent out, send them out automatically, be able to send out questionnaires and track the responses, send out reminders, be able to generate reports of who's on hold at any point in time, automatically send out notices when holds are lifted. All of those things, which are, pretty simple tasks if they can be automated. But when you have people doing it manually, it takes a long time to do all of those things. And again, there's a lot of room for error. So as a company, we agree that was a good place to start. So we are bringing the legal hold software in-house will be huge for us. We're working on that now. And the other thing I'd like to say is, when you go in-house, you learn so much. And I had mentioned how legal holds were new for me. And so, I didn't know anything about Office 365 and licensing, and I didn't know anything about that. And then when I'm looking into legal hold software and I'm hearing about, oh, you need to have this license or that license, and it's just been a real learning experience, but it's all been great.
Yeah. I wouldn't imagine that you would be involved in, unless you really were the IT department. I would imagine that you would be involved with licenses and, what that means and what it includes and how to manage those. So I'm a lot of learn, I'm sure. But you mentioned technology. So now that you've kind of settled in-house in eDiscovery, how are you looking at kind of tool stack management? How you organize all of those pieces of the EDRM, as you said?
Yeah. So it's it's looking at the model and thinking about, okay, what technology do we currently use for these tasks? Is there a better technology out there? We currently use vendors to host all of our data. It would be great if we could bring that in-house and not have to rely on a vendor, or maybe we only rely on a vendor for bigger matters. I guess the con of that is currently my team for eDiscovery is just myself, and then I have a project manager. So we're limited as far as what we could do with the day-to-day tasks that come with all of that. But if we could host it all ourselves, I mean, there is less risk to our data. We're not transferring it out. Again, with the efficiencies. And then the biggest one is going to be the cost savings to the company, which is a big focus.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's the classic build versus buy question that everyone's trying to solve. And I appreciate what you shared there. I mean, speaking of vendors, to the extent you have to rely on outside resources, I'm sure you inherited some in your role. How did you go through the process of evaluation?
Yep. So again, just coming in, everything was new to me. So I made a list of all the vendors and what they're doing.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
I'm a list person. If people don't know that, you will quickly learn that about me if you ever hang out with me for more than 2 hours. So you make the list of what your vendors are doing. I will say, coming from a large law firm and having been in the eDiscovery space for so long prior to coming in-house, I mean, I knew most of the big vendors and had worked with them. So I think that helps you because you're not hearing names for the first time. And so the vendors that we had in place are vendors I'd all worked with previously. And I, again, observed. Like, to me, that's the biggest thing when you go in-house is if you have the luxury of observing for a few months to see how things are happening, making notes of what can be done better, what's being done really well. Those are the things that I did for those first few months. And then I thought, okay, this vendor seems great. I don't know that we need to get rid of that vendor, but could we maybe get some cheaper rates? Could we renegotiate the contract? Or if you're looking at a vendor and you're not happy with what you've seen, can you have a call to discuss maybe a better way to do things? Are they receptive to that? And if not, then maybe you need to put out some RFPs and try to see if you want to bring in some new vendors. I mean, the issue for us is we don't want our data with so many different vendors, right? So we really want to try to limit how many vendors we have. And so it's just been looking at the current contracts, the current vendors, and see what's working and what's not. And I mean, again, coming back to the cost savings, which I think I've said a lot, but it is a big focus of a company. And just because someone can do it cheaper doesn't mean they can do it better. So you really want to make sure that you are going to be working with a vendor who is reputable and will give you the work product you expect.
Yeah, 100%. And the continuity of service, right? You got to make sure they're going to be present down in the future. So if you decide it's time to change, Stephanie, what are you looking for? What are you looking for in a vendor from a service and technology perspective?
Yeah. So I would say there's several things. For me, I'm huge on accountability, not just professionally, but personally, right? Everyone needs to be accountable for what it is they're doing or what they promise they're going to do. And I want to trust that you're going to be accountable to me. And so here I will give a little praise to Level Legal, which, no one asked me to give this, but I'm just going to give it. So we mentioned at the beginning of the call that we've worked together for years now. And when I was over at Wilmer, and I remember I had worked on 2 managed reviews before I had done work with Level Legal. And the managed reviews, I mean, they were okay. I wasn't overly impressed with the vendors we had. I remember specifically that I would request reporting and not get it, or reporting was promised to me and I wouldn't get it. They really were complimenting themselves on how well they did with QCing documents and making sure that all the coding was consistent and, the productions would be perfect. And I QC everybody's work. And so I remember with those other vendors going in and QCing the work product and just noticing things were not consistent and then having to question them about, well, why does this look this way when it shouldn't? And then, oh yeah, that was our mistake. We're sorry. And I felt like they weren't really being accountable, right? It was an I'm sorry, but not a we'll do better. And I remember when I came out to Texas and I met with Daniel and one of his colleagues, Roberta, and they just clearly laid out their process. They told me everything up front, like what they needed from me, what their timelines would be, what they needed to be able to give us cost projections. And they lived by those estimates and those timelines, and they delivered quality work. And I remember the reporting. They were just so willing to work with us on everything we needed. And I mean, I really think the work product was great, and I can't say enough good things about them. That's my plug, but we'll leave it at that. But the other thing,
appreciate that. No, thank you. The kind words mean a lot. But you're right. You know, you mentioned something I think is critical here. You've got to start by listening and then building the process around how you want the matter to go operationally, and then also strategically. You know, that's often overlooked. And I will say, I'm flattered to hear the kind words, but you know, as important, I think everyone listening should recognize sometimes outside counsel or even in-house resources can be viewed as a crutch almost. So we just want you to do first pass document review, for instance. We'll handle the QC, and it turns into this process where needless time is spent correcting avoidable mistakes and things like that. And so you've got to lay all that out up front. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
What else are you looking for, Stephanie? You know, if it's time to change.
So, I mean, again, my biggest thing is collaboration, which goes to the listening, right? Like, you want to be able to work with a vendor who will work with you, right? Listen to what it is you have to say, listen to your concerns, and then be innovative and think of ways that they can solve your issues or work with you to maybe better improve the process. I think experience is huge. I think for vendors, you're generally not going to go with a vendor who's not well known in the space, for better or worse, right? Reputation means something. And then the biggest one, not biggest one, but a big thing you think about is going to be cost savings. I'm not going to say cost savings would make you go with one vendor over another, but you definitely consider it for sure.
As you're talking about cost savings, are you quantifying the opportunity cost, you know, total project cost, total cost of ownership from those metrics? Or are you looking more on a unit price basis?
For me, it's more unit price basis at this point anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate you sharing that, Stephanie. So this is the spot in the show where we shift gears. We're going to move to some rapid fire questions, if that's all right, Stephanie. Before though, I want to just tell everybody listening. No, it'll be fun. If you do have any questions, please put them in the comment section. We'll get those to Stephanie directly. All right. So here we go.
Okay.
What is the hardest thing about eDiscovery, Stephanie?
Hardest thing about eDiscovery. I guess I would say it is explaining what I do to people who are not familiar with eDiscovery. And case in point is my own mother. I've been doing this for a long time, and she still does not know what I do for a living. And when I was at a law firm, and then I went in-house, she said to me, "Is that something you're supposed to do?" And I said, "Of course, right?" But she thinks lawyer, you work at a law firm. And so it's just, eDiscovery is its own little niche, as we all know that are in this space. And those who aren't familiar with it just don't understand what it is.
It's hard to put it in perspective unless you've been very, very close to it. I'm still waiting for a movie that really does a deep dive on the discipline. That'd be fun.
Sorry, when I was just going to say, when I was at I did some contract attorney work at one point, and we used to talk about making a reality show about eDiscovery.
Well, we do see it in the headlines occasionally. I mean, we talk about lost emails, or sometimes salacious exchanges by text get publicized. So that's kind of an example that occasionally I'll use to go, well, when you saw this on the news or this congressional testimony.
That's what I do too, Joe. I say the same thing. That. Yep. Then it sounds interesting, and everybody wants to do it when you sell it like that.
Right.
There you go. All right, next question, Stephanie. That was great. So, biggest surprise about being an in-house eDiscovery attorney?
Biggest surprise. So I've been really fortunate to meet people who manage eDiscovery within companies across the United States. And it's been really interesting to learn that whatever company, whether big or small, we all seem to have the same challenges. And the people that I've met have just been phenomenal and just willing to discuss their challenges, offer solutions, I have no hesitation about calling anybody at any point in time and saying, this is what I'm dealing with right now. Do you have any suggestions? And they might say, no, I don't, but some so-and-so might be helpful. And so I've just met so many people from being in this in-house position that it was really unexpected to me. And it's been a wonderful surprise. I've had great meetings with my peers. I've learned so much. So it's been a real surprise for me, because I thought, when I was at a law firm, I knew a lot of eDiscovery people. But I don't feel like we collaborated as much. So
that's great to have that strong network.
Yep.
And I can attest that none of us would be where we are without the right guidance along the way from key people. That's wonderful.
Well, and I think we're lucky too. I mean, the eDiscovery space is pretty small. I feel like, right? We all seem to know each other. You go to conferences, it's always the same people that are there. So I think that helps too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next up, Stephanie. So what do most people not know about you?
My deepest, darkest secrets.
Let's get into it.
I don't know. I'm a pretty open book, but I guess one thing that surprises people a lot is, so I actually met my best friend on the first day of kindergarten. We were fighting over a doll that was inside of a toy box. I'll never forget it. And 40 plus years later, she's still my best friend. So I'm loyal. What else? I rediscovered running during COVID. And so I ran my first half marathon this year.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Yep. I might do another one. I don't know that I'll ever do a full, but yeah, maybe we'll stick with halves.
That's awesome.
I have been on national TV for an episode of a show that I've not watched to date. Don't ask me any details, but I will not give them to you. But I
was just about to ask.
No, I will tell you though that occasionally people will still recognize me and ask me about the show, and I'll be like, "Yeah, that was me."
Really?
Yep.
That's it. I feel like we need to know more.
Yeah. No.
While I'm in town, we need to grab a drink.
Okay, maybe that'll get it out of me. And then I think maybe I don't know if it's interesting or not, but so my husband and I actually were at the same college for 2 years, but we never met and didn't know each other, and we didn't meet until 10 years later. So it's like sliding doors, right?
Oh yeah, right.
Yep.
That's awesome. All right, you have a favorite saying?
Favorite saying? Yes, and my son and my husband hate it because I say it all the time. A place for everything and everything in its place. I can't stand clutter. Well, I told you I'm a list person. I'm very neat. And so, yeah, I think if you take something out, you put it back where you got it. You don't just leave it out. Drives me crazy.
What gets you up in the morning?
Her culture index profile. Daniel.
Say that again, Joey. Sorry.
I think I could draw her culture index profile.
Oh yeah. We may have to do that.
We'll test that. We do level legal to get to know each other.
All right, Stephanie. Last rapid fire question. Then we have a question from one of the guests. So, what gets you up in the morning?
What gets me up in the morning? I am an early riser, and so I go to the gym every day at 5 a.m. And then what I look forward to the most after the gym is I love English breakfast tea. And my biggest love in life is probably chocolate. So I start every morning with a cup of tea and a piece or more of chocolate every single day.
Or more.
Yeah, or more. Usually it's or more. I mean, I consider myself a chocoholic, but I try to rein it in.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So, go ahead, Joey.
I understand that my audio is maybe a little choppy. So when we get to the end, I'll let you do the closing. The live direction here.
Happy to do that. All right, so we have a question from the audience. Let's flash it up here. This is from Kevin. So you've mentioned what qualities make a great managed review provider. What makes data hosting vendors stand out? That's a good question.
So it is a good question. I would say cost is going to come into play when it comes to that, as far as actually just hosting the data and processing the data. But I also think someone who is willing to offer solutions, right? Like what will work for you as a company. I do think for us, having long-term vendors, they know our data, which has been really helpful to someone like me who is newer to the company. I don't know what our data looks like. I don't know what we typically have. And so being able to rely on a vendor who knows that has been really great. That being said, if you're looking to switch to a new vendor, they're not going to have that. But just someone who is willing to really dig in and think outside the box. Just think about, offer solutions that you hadn't thought about that would really make a difference to you, your team, your bills.
I was talking to a client today about this, in fact, and there's no prescription for these projects. And I think a lot of the folks in the industry are waiting for clients to tell them what they want or what they need to do. And I believe, I'd like to hear your thoughts here. I think clients are begging for somebody to be bold and make recommendations and get creative and help solve problems, not just wait to be told how to get from A to B. Does that resonate with you?
It does. I think the problem is everyone's issues are different, right? So you can't offer like a one-stop shopping solution. It really depends on the specifics of what you're dealing with. So I just, for me, it's just about the collaboration. I don't know. You need to be able to talk openly with the person you're working with, whether it's a vendor, it's a client, it's your outside counsel, it's your in-house counsel. Just be honest about what it is you want, what you're looking for. If the budget comes into play, what you're willing to spend or how you need to make it work and how do you get there? And I am someone, I'm not shy about what I don't know. I'm not shy about asking for help when I think I need it. And again, I think if you have a network of people that you can reach out to give you input, to help you, it only makes you look better. So do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks for answering that. So Stephanie, we're coming to the end of our time here. Anything else you want to share?
No, just, as far as making a move from a law firm to in-house, I think obviously it's an individual decision, but I think there's a lot of pros that come from it. And I could not be happier that I did it. And I think having people you work with that respect what you do, that are willing to listen, that's the biggest thing, right? You want people to listen to what it is you have to say. And I've been really fortunate. So the move has been great for me.
That's great. Well, congrats on the success.
Thank you.
So everyone listening, thanks for joining us here for Traveling, tips and stories about Stephanie Angel's move from big law to big eDiscovery. So I'm Daniel Bonner, Joey Sieber, and Stephanie here. We had a good time. We covered why Stephanie left WilmerHale to set up an eDiscovery practice at a global 500 company, what internal and external attorneys wish they knew about each other's roles and how to handle legal holds, managing tool stacks, and selecting vendors. So thanks, Stephanie. Great insights. It was good to catch up today. So if we didn't get to your question here, we'll answer later offline. For more information like this, please visit our website at levellegal.com. And please stay tuned for an update on our next guest. The next episode will be in January, so more details to come soon there. And keep an eye out for registration as we announce those upcoming episodes. So if you have any more questions, reach out. Thanks again and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Bye-bye.